Hello and welcome to 10 Minutes with Ten10. I'm Ash, co-founder and CTO at Ten10, and over the course of the next 3 podcasts, we're going to be exploring AI adoption within organizations and practical considerations for actually making it happen. I'm delighted to be joined by Miriam today from Coincidencity.
Thank you very much, Ash. I'm very much looking forward to this podcast series. So Ash, what we're seeing with a lot of our clients is that they're really keen on diving into AI, and let's leave aside the fact that sometimes they don't know what they really mean, but they are a bit wary of jumping into a major project without fully understanding it. And they have seen the presentations from all the very big technology consultancies, and they know they want to do something, but they're not quite sure. What are the kind of questions they should ask? What should they be looking for when to get started?
Good question. I think as well, just to pick up on that, as an organisation, we do actually do quite well off the back of some of those large organisations that have gone in and created the slide deck and then walked away and then told them how much it's going to cost to implement it, and then they may well take a look at us. But I think the questions you need to ask is what am I going to be left with? Yeah. What am I going to end up with when that organisation rides off into the sunset? Yeah. Or almost the binary opposite of that is, how do I get this organisation out of my organisation because I've become so beholden to them? And I think one part of that we sort of built over the years at Ten10 is this idea of almost making ourselves redundant in this process. Yeah. We don't want to stay there forever. And in actual fact, our academy was built with that in mind, essentially. To answer that question of, great, you've got these people, but what happens when you lot ride off into the sunset? To which the answer is, these junior individuals get to transition to be your permanent employees. So these are individuals trained in the skills you need, trained in AI, who are the right fit for your organization culturally, from a personality point of view, in terms of alignment of values and goals. And then over time, the seniors do roll off and you're left with those juniors. One of the challenges is always, how do you build that capability if you don't have it already? So within Ten10, we have those senior consultants who are able to come in and define that and then build that and put the meat on the bones. But then over time, they do roll off at a point everybody's comfortable with and happy with, leaving those junior people behind to kind of take up the slack.
Yes, and having been on the business side, having been the CFO who signs off the consultancy checks, sometimes over many years, I absolutely love that model because it just means that it solves so many problems in one go. It solves the problem that the organization has trying to hire the right kind of people, then to develop them without having the skills internally to develop them. You provide all of that. And it solves the problem that you have skills in-house who can continuously grow and evolve and learn, rather than each time a new change comes in, you have to go outside and bring the consultancies in. Because having seen many business transformations that have to be redone every 3 years, and all the consultancies come back yet again with a lot of people who then have to be educated on the culture of the organization, on the structure, on how things really work, etc. It's a very inefficient process. So I love that model. And as I said earlier, it's very aligned to the way how we think about our work, that in terms of the aspect of change management, I'm not even keen on that word, because I don't really want to manage change. I want to help people in the organization themselves develop the capabilities to manage change themselves, to continuously grow, to be a truly learning organization. What do you think are the very practical first question that somebody should ask to get started with either the technical side or the people side?
I think one of the first things is, I think we discussed this last time in terms of helping to define that pilot. Now, the way in which we do that is we just come in and there's kind of a fixed price piece of work to be able to evaluate what you're looking for, to be able to kind of put some boundaries around it, exactly as you said before, Miriam, in your sort of finance space, being able to constrain that and say, this is what it's going to look like, this is what the outcomes are going to be. But then also being able to have, ultimately, after that pilot has been conducted and after the value has been demonstrated, to then be able to have more junior, lower cost people come in and to be able to do that. But I think one
that
thing
makes my CFO heart sing.
that normally cheers up our CFO as well whenever we mention that. But one thing that I think is really important, and you touched on there, was the idea of a learning organisation and continuous learning. One thing that's really clear to me is that the AI is changing things at such a pace. I think the days when an individual says, even if they're not a technical individual, if you're a business analyst or a project manager, says, I know my stuff and that's it now. I don't need to learn anything new. I think those days are gone. And
for sure.
One thing we see when we land junior people who we test and assess them for that continuous learning mindset and instill that into them is that they then take that into the wider organization. So we work with some organizations where the teams are, the average age is quite old. They don't have an attrition problem. Nobody ever leaves. But that creates its own problem in terms of the aging workforce. People often quite set in their ways. But when they have these junior people working with them with that kind of mindset, that gets adapted by the wider teams as well. And then people realize that there is a way to do this. And as you said, it's not non-threatening. It's not a case of, oh gosh, my role's changing, I must learn this. I think I would argue that's one of the most important things.
And I would absolutely agree. And I personally dislike the phrase that people don't like change. Because the reality is, people do like change. I mean, people go on holiday every year, completely changing the daily routine. So the vast majority of people do like change. It's they don't like to be changed, which is also why I don't like the term change management. When you create that organic dynamic where you tap into the motivation for people to change. And by the way, that is not just one motivation. There's obviously a whole plethora. But you can tap into the individual motivations. People actually quite enjoy the change. And I have seen this in organizations where senior people or more long-standing members of teams who were very set in their ways. I have seen that when some more junior people come along with new ideas and it's integrated in a sympathetic way, they take great pride on both teaching but also learning. They actually really enjoy that. That is the vast majority. So this image that, 80% of an organization workforce doesn't want to change, I think that's completely wrong. That's a picture that's painted because of traditional approaches to change management, which I think are very much on their way out, because with AI, they don't work very well.
No. I mean, who would welcome, having somebody come into an organisation and tell them what they're doing wrong and how it needs to be changed? It's that classic sort of way of implementing it, but that still is very much the case, rather than doing it internally and building it slowly.
If you think about it, it's a very old-fashioned way. It is it always makes me think back of the 1950s and 60s, where knowledge was very hard to acquire. And it was very, at that time, a consultant who understood a lot of things about an industry could take that knowledge into different organizations because they themselves didn't have the ability to acquire that knowledge. Well, it's gone. Give me 20 minutes and I have the whole McKinsey playbook in front of me. And so it really emphasizes that these days the implementation, which relies on the human interactions and the relationships and also human ingenuity, become much, much more important, which you can't demand from the outside. You can't even demand it from the top down. It needs to be a much more organic process.
So I think we're kind of at a place now where businesses are starting to adopt it. They're running pilots. They're facing some challenges with that, which we've addressed in terms of how do you scale it and how do you embed this from a people point of view as well as a technical point of view? But what sort of changes do you foresee coming down the line in terms of AI, in terms of trends?
Well, I'm not going to comment on any technology trend because with AI, the change is so fast that whatever I say now will be outdated in probably 2 hours' time. But the big change or the big trends that I think will accelerate is the democratization of knowledge and, to an extent, skill as well. What I mean by that is that with the use of both personal productivity AI as well as agentic AI, more junior people in organizations will start to take on certain tasks that were traditionally reserved for more senior or more experienced people. Obviously, this has to be done with the right kind of guardrails and the right kind of support. But we're already seeing in some organizations that, say, more junior lawyers are now doing work around client acquisition that was previously reserved for some more senior partners. And they're able to do that because they are able to learn about the industry, learn about a particular company, learn about particular topics much faster. They still need to be experts in their particular topics, don't get me wrong, but they are able to do roles more, and therefore I can see a more level playing field being established in organization that really changes the traditional pyramid, the traditional hierarchy of many organizations.
I think I'd agree with that. I think one of the big challenges, I think, in AI is the fact that it hasn't been around, particularly looking at agentic AI in its current guise, for very long. So in many other industries, law included, you've always had that model where for decades or hundreds of years, you've had people who've become more experienced, become more senior. How do you magic that out of thin air, essentially? Because you can't find somebody with 10 years experience in these areas, for example. So you somehow need to be able to instill that sort of senior understanding, wisdom, for want of a better word, at a junior level and kind of accelerate that. There's a lot of talk sort of around AI being used to dumb down people, and they can't that people aren't thinking for themselves anymore. But I actually think there's an opportunity here in using AI as a teacher as well. So in the code development kind of co-pilots and tools, yes, you can have this, you can have it generate the code for you. That is often good code that it writes. There's this question around, well, if you don't have the seniority to be able to know what good looks like and guide it, then is that a risk? And it is a risk. To your point, you need the guardrails in place. But also at the same time, it's there as a teacher. If you don't understand something, you can say to it, why did you do it that way? And it will explain its reasoning to you. That's really valuable, I think, and really sort of important to help accelerate that. There's always a question, and people often say this to me, is this a flash in the pan? Is this thing going to go away? I really don't think it is. I think we're looking at possibly, there's bigger revolution as the internet or the printing press or something along that sort of level of magnitude, because of the impact it can have, not just in automating or doing a thing, but actually broad ranging across what people need to do. So I think there's huge opportunity there for people to be able to embrace it. I think it is completely fragmented at the moment in terms of technology, different vendors, different tools, and the pace of change is shocking in terms of the new things coming along all the time and the advancements in these things. And there's lots of focus on the frontier models, and this new LLM can do this one's better than this one, and all the rest of it. But I think there's so much value to be gained from actually not using those brand new models, but actually using more basic ones to do more basic things, particularly in agentic AI. Those frontier models, they cost a lot of money. With your CFO hat on, that's
the
that's
compute
important
costs
as well. Completely,
scarily.
being able to engineer some of that cost out of it by using LLMs at the appropriate level. So to some extent, this stuff will become cheaper over time as well for what's required. But I think the scope of the areas that it will be involved in is just going to widen.
100%. And you made the point about people continuing to learn and to use it in ways that are not just focusing on specific tasks. And currently we're working with an organization and help building their leadership team, their senior leadership team, to develop little mini leadership AI teams. And that is not to replace any single person, but it's a small scale project, but it's helping them, these very very busy business leaders, to be better prepared when they go into their monthly meetings. Because anybody who's been in business knows that you get your papers, you try to skim them half an hour beforehand, and then you have a long discussion and the meeting overruns. Changing that and helping them to make better and faster decisions, because they had their mini AI team, not just briefing them, but also helping them think through the questions from very critical perspectives. One, for example, obviously, is always a CFO perspective. Is a small ask for AI. Compute cost, not very high at all because it's so small, and yet it has a measurable impact on the quality of the work that gets done by these people and the way how they can truly interact with each other and therefore, take their business forward.
Yes, yeah. What I would say as well is, whilst it's developing at such a rate of knots, whilst, the frontier models of today and tomorrow will become the more mediocre and cheaper models in terms of their performance, I think it still does come down absolutely to working out which horse you're going to back, because as an organization, you can't be flip-flopping on a weekly basis when something new comes out and have to throw it away. So I think it's about, whilst there'll be so much change going on, in my mind, I can't see a point in the future where, those hyperscalers, the likes of AWS, Azure, GCP, where they will be superseded by something else. And the thing that's becoming clear with AI is that you need the compute, you need the data, you need the storage. You can't build that on your own unless you have a really, really niche case for it, I guess, and a huge amount of investment. So whatever does come along is going to continue to be built on those.
Yes, for sure. And I think it's a bit like nobody really these days tries to build a brand new search engine, right? There are some niche cases, but we all know why Googling has become a verb by itself. So you look where do you actually get the competitive advantage? That is not by building your own. And I have clients who thought 6-7 years ago that they should be building their own. Most have abandoned that idea and are just going let's pick a platform, something that we really trust, where we can work with great partners and stick with that, at least for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe in a couple of years there won't be search. Maybe it'll all just be LLMs.
Well, as I said, I'm staying away from the actual technology prediction, because maybe we'll do it all by mind transmission in the first place.
Super. Excellent.
Thank
you very much, Miriam. Thank you.
Thank you, Ash. It's been great.
Thank you very much for joining us today. If you'd like to find out more on anything we've discussed, please reach out to us at ten10.com, TEN10, for any technical aspects that we've covered. And for more on the people side, if you'd like to reach out to Miriam,
please find out more at coincidencity.co.uk. The exact spelling will be in the show notes.
Perfect. Thanks, Miriam. Thank you very much and look forward to seeing you next time.